Hello, class. I hope you enjoyed that brief lesson on the old gods of our world. Although most of them have long been forgotten, their impact is still felt even now. And who knows, with all the chaos happening on Panathor, it might be possible for them to make a return. Now, in the last lesson, I ended it stating that I would speak of our current age of conflict, but I have realized that doing so without discussing the other factions of our world would be a disservice. So for now, we will continue with a new lesson. For today's lesson, we will speak of the Sylvan Kin. Before they built their cities of stone and glass, before their focus on birthright and legacy, before they created what many would call civilization, the elves of old were one with the natural world. Residing in Galahir, they had learned of the beauty of nature and the web of life. And while over the centuries, many elves chose to leave their forest home to pursue more materialistic goals, many others chose to stay and continue as they always had. These elves soon becoming known by most as the Fae, but by their own elven kindred, they were known as the Sylvan Kin. Not much is known about the Sylvan Kin during the time of light. It can only be assumed that they stayed deep in the forests, away from the various dramas unfolding around the world, simple observers to the insanity of civilization, at least until the Shattering. It was during the shattering of the Phanulian Mirror, the event that split the Celestians into their wicked and shining halves, that the Sylvan Kin performed one of the greatest contributions to the defeat of the wicked gods. For it was the elven magics that laced the very earth, woods, and air of Galahir that protected the Celestian Karina from having her own soul split in twain. This protection eventually allowing her to become the Green Lady that rules over many of the forests of Panathor today. Such an act has created a bond between the Sylvan Kin and the forces of nature that has held strong to this very day. The Sylvan Kin of now tend to inhabit the deepest and most magical parts of any forest, whether that be in the bountiful woods of Galahir, the twisted roots of the twilight glades, and the other smaller but still ancient forests that dot the globe. There they live amongst the fairies, nymphs, and other woodland spirits who call those places home, and steep themselves in the wildness of nature. This wildness influences the habits and personalities of the Sylvan Kin, making many of them fairly capricious by nature. This effect is most obvious in their young. These young elves who take this wildness to heart become known as Bosgraves. They live entirely in the present, living day by day with barely any worries, leaving thoughts of the future and other concerns far from their mind. So in tune are they with the will of the forest, that they attract woodland spirits that constantly float around them. And in battle, these spirits bite at the heels of any who would harm their fellow wild brethren. Most of these young elves grow out of this wildness, becoming more like the elves we know of in other kindred societies, but a few fully embrace the chaotic nature of the woodland life, becoming known as arch-wraiths. These arch-wraiths become solitary beings, living on the edge of Sylvan Kin society, and becoming even more mercurial and capricious than their fellow elves. When forced to fight, they stride into battle surrounded by the most powerful of the ethereal woodland spirits, the Fairy Kings, fighting more as a representative of the spirits of the woods than as a mortal. Now, Sylvan Kin as a whole are distrustful of most outsiders, even their fellow elves, and would prefer to keep to themselves, letting the world outside their woods go about their business. However, the world outside has a nasty habit of intruding on their lives, and to protect their homes, the Sylvan Kin will inevitably find themselves called to war. Their armies as a whole mimic many elven formations, containing many of the types of soldiers you would find in other kindred armies. However, their appearance greatly differs. Where in another kindred army, you would find highly decorative armor and beautifully crafted blades of steel, the warriors of the Sylvan Kin will often wear enchanted bark plate and carry silver enchanted blades, just as beautiful as anything crafted in an elven city, but highlighting the woodland spirit that permeates Sylvan Kin society. Kindred glade stalkers, as they are in other elven armies, are mostly solitary woodsmen and pathfinders in times of peace, living within and respectively using the resources of the forest they love. But in times of war, they become the vanguard of the Sylvan Kin army, locating the position of their foes and laying into them with shots from their arrows. Of these glade stalkers, a few are known to be especially skillful. Known by many as master hunters, their skills at stealth, tracking, and archery are second to none. When the enemy is located by these glade stalkers or master hunters, the core melee forces of the Sylvan Kin will then strike, the lightly armored forest guard harassing the enemy's sides, while their heavy infantry, known as the Hunters of the Wild, stab into the foolish foe. Of course, like the elves of other kindred, the Sylvan can also rely heavily on their cavalry to quickly strike blows at their enemy's weakest points. They greatly prefer Silver Breeze cavalry, the lightly armored mounted scouts ideal for quickly harassing the foe within thick woods. The elites of these Silver Breeze cavalry are eventually chosen to become members of the Windborn, elves whose exceptional skills with horse and bow are further enhanced with silver-tipped magical arrows that can turn the tide of any battle with a well-aimed shot. Still, there are times when speed and shot may not be the answer, and in those cases, the Sylvan Kin call upon the Fen Rangers. Similar to the heavy Stormwind cavalry of other elven armies, they charge into the enemy clad in leather as strong as steel, and armed with blades that slash at the enemy as they charge through them. And when magic is necessary, the archmages known as Spirit Weavers use the very woods to bind their foes in place, before permanently removing their presence from their woods with the power of the elements. And when necessary, the Sylvan Kin can call upon their allies of the forces of nature to aid them in battle. There are wild panthers. Unlike those ridden by the Sisters of Basileia, the Sylvan Kin are able to use their link to the powers of nature to simply call those beasts forth, seeing no need to domesticate what are already savage predators. Since many rivers cross through the deepest parts of forests, the River Guard Tree Leapers commonly ally with the Sylvan Kin, the two races sharing a love of nature and a hatred of those that would desecrate it. And there are of course the Dryads, Forest Shamblers, Forest Wardens, and Tree Herders, the tree spirits who are naturally part of the forest they call home. And leading all of these protectors of nature, you will not find kings, queens, or nobles, for such inherited titles seem arrogant to the Sylvan Kin. Unlike the elves of other nations, respect is not given to those with special blood, but by those who earn a title through duty, titles such as Custodian of the Way, Guardro, and others that highlight their position of stewardship, leading their forces on foot, or if necessary, atop a mighty dragon known as a barkworm. They fight with the forces of the Sylvan Kin against those who would see their forest home spoiled. Well, class, I hope you enjoyed this lesson on the Sylvan Kin, and hopefully, you have learned enough to keep yourself respectful if you are ever within the forest they call home. For our next lesson, we will speak of a faction that share none of the positive traits of the Sylvan Kin, or honestly, any other faction. Next lesson, we will speak of the Ratkin.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video on the Sylvan Kin in the Kings of War universe. If you like it, please like, subscribe, comment, press the little bell so you know when I post, etc, etc. And if you really like it and you're inclined and you have the cash, please consider sending a little money my way to my Patreon or my Coffee account. The extra money gives me the time I need to work on these stories I love. Anyways, thanks for listening/watching and see you next time.